Don't move, son. Don't you move a muscle. There's something leaning down over the tin roof right now, not 2 foot above your head. And it is listening to see if you know it's there. I want you to hear this the way I heard it, told to me by a boy who lived, barely, and who never did sleep right again after. He was camped in an old 3-sided lean-to, the kind the Trail Service built back when the CCC boys still had calluses on their hands. And he made the one mistake every fool makes out there in the dark hollers. He got used to a sound. That right there. That dry, scraping hush against corrugated metal. He heard it, and his tired mind, Lord, it does this to all of us, his tired mind decided it was nothing, decided it was just a dead limb swaying on some wind that wasn't blowing. And so he closed his eyes. He slowed his breath to sleep. That's when it started counting his breaths. Settle in now. Find yourself a comfortable position. Pull them blankets close as the static fades. 'Cause tonight we're opening a new case file from the Redacted Archives. And I promise you, you will listen to your own house different after this one. The trail guides, they'll warn you plenty. Look up before you lay down, they say. Mind the deadfall. Mind the leaners. Mind anything hanging loose in that canopy that logging men have called a widowmaker since before your granddaddy's granddaddy swung an axe. But there's one thing them guidebooks never warn you about, and it's the thing that kills the careful ones same as the careless. They never warn you about the fatal error of trying to tune a sound out, of letting your breathing teach something in the dark exactly how fast it's allowed to come down on you. This is the story of the Widowmaker of Beulah Ridge. Get comfortable now. It's a cold one. His name don't matter much, so we'll just call him the hiker, like the old stories always did. He'd started that morning at first light, chasing 22 miles of the trail, through a stretch of Appalachian wilderness so far off the beaten path that his phone hadn't shown a single bar since noon the day before. He was 3 days out from resupply, boots long since soaked through, and every step by that afternoon landed like he was stepping on somebody else's legs. Now, October up on that ridge don't play fair. The fog comes in low and blind, rolling up out the hollers like the mountain itself is exhaling. And it don't care one bit about a man's schedule. By 2 in the afternoon, that fog had swallowed him whole, white, thick, wet as a wrung-out rag, so heavy he couldn't see his own boots half the time. Just white in every direction, and the cold rock underfoot, slick with moss and old rain, trying its level best to put him on the ground. He went down onto one knee, hard, felt the cold soak clean through his pants, and for a moment, just a moment, something in him wanted to lay right there on that mountain and let the fog have him. But he was a stubborn sort, pulled himself up, kept walking, one hand out in front of him like a blind man in his own house, feeling for the world. That fog does something strange to a man's ears, too, not just his eyes. Every sound gets swallowed and thrown back different. So a squirrel scrambling through dead leaves 20 feet off sounds like footsteps right behind you. And a branch settling somewhere up in that gray canopy sounds like it's leaning down directly over your shoulder. He'd stopped twice already, heart hammering, turning in slow circles with his hands half raised, seeing nothing but white in every direction he faced. Each time he told himself it was nerves. Each time he kept walking, because there weren't another choice worth considering out there, not with dark closing in and the temperature already dragging itself down toward freezing. His pack straps had rubbed his shoulders raw hours back, and every breath he pulled in tasted of wet stone and rotten leaf mold. That particular cold mineral taste the mountain gets once autumn's got its teeth all the way in. His legs had gone past aching into something closer to numb. That dangerous kind of numb where a man stops trusting his own footing and starts trusting luck instead. Dusk don't announce itself gentle in that fog. It just arrives all at once, like somebody snuffed a candle in a room you didn't know you were in. And that's exactly when, half froze, half lost, aching in every joint a man's got, he saw it. A shape cutting through the white, squarish, solid, man-made, a shelter. Lord have mercy, a shelter. It was an old one, 3-sided, hand-hewn logs gone silver-gray with age. A low tin roof rusted the color of dried blood in patches. The whole structure leaning just slightly on its foundation the way old things do when the ground itself has started to give up under 'em. There weren't no fourth wall, just open darkness facing out into the black wall of trees beyond. He didn't think twice. Couldn't afford to. He ducked in under that low roof, dropped his pack in the corner, and felt something in his chest unclench for the first time in 11 hours. He didn't notice, how could he, that just behind that shelter, half swallowed already by the tree line, stood one long dead trunk, bone white, bare of bark and patches, leaning at an angle that weren't quite natural, leaning the exact direction of that tin roof. And it had been leaning there, patient as stone, for longer than that shelter had stood. He dug through his pack in the last of the gray light, found a strip of jerky gone soft and salty, and chewed it slow, staring out at the wall of fog beyond the open face of the lean-to. Somewhere out past that white curtain, the sun was going down behind the ridgeline, though you'd never have known it to look. The light just dimmed by degrees, gray to grayer to black, till the tree line itself disappeared and there weren't nothing left to see at all. Only the shape of the shelter around him and the small, contained world of his own tired breathing. Now the forest at night has a voice, son. Crickets, an owl somewhere off calling to nobody, the small shuffling things that move under leaves. But that night, up on Beulah Ridge, all of it just stopped. No wind, no insects, no owl. Just a cold, deep, listening kind of quiet. The sort of quiet that don't feel empty so much as it feels occupied. The hiker didn't think much of it right off. Exhaustion has a way of making a man deaf to warnings his own gut is trying to give him. He worked himself down into his winter mummy bag, that cocoon of nylon and goose down, zipped it high up under his chin against the granddaddy cold that settles deep into your joints up on that ridge come autumn. He lay there in the dark, aching, grateful, already halfway down into sleep. And that's when the sound started. A dry scrape, slow, deliberate, running clean across that corrugated tin roof from one edge toward the other, like something heavy dragging its knuckles across it real careful-like. He opened his eyes in the dark, listened. Nothing. Just his own heartbeat loud in his ears. Then it come again. His mind. And I want you to understand this is the same thing your mind would do. Same thing mine would do. His mind went hunting for an explanation it could live with. A branch, he told himself. Just a dead branch resting against the roof, moving on a breeze. Never mind that the air outside hadn't stirred a single leaf in an hour. Never mind that there weren't a whisper of wind to be had. The mind wants an answer bad enough, it'll build one out of nothing at all. Just wood, he whispered to himself. Just barely above a breath. Just an old dead branch. He closed his eyes again. Told himself the oldest lie a tired man tells himself in the dark. That if he don't look at it, it ain't real. That if he just breathes slow, breathes even, lets his tired body do what it's begging to do, the sound will just fold itself into the background of the night same as everything else does. That right there, son, that's a mistake. That's the one they never put in the guidebooks. A body can walk 22 miles through blinding fog and come out the other side just fine. A body can slip on wet stone and catch itself, can go hungry a day longer than it planned, can shiver through a granddaddy cold that settles deep into the joints and still wake up breathing. But a mind that decides to stop paying attention, that's the one thing out there in them dark hollers that can't ever be undone once it's done. He forced his breath down long and slow, the way you do falling off to sleep. In through the nose, 4 counts. Out through the mouth, 4 counts. Tuning the world out, one measured breath at a time. Telling himself over and over, it's nothing, it's nothing, it's nothing. He didn't notice, not yet, that the sound was starting to match him, timing itself, learning him. It was somewhere past midnight when the pattern finally broke through his half-sleep. And once a man notices a thing like that, son, he cannot unnotice it. Cannot ever again. He was drawn in a slow breath, and right on the tail end of his inhale, the wood groaned. One long, low, structural groan, like a tree bearing weight it weren't built to bear. Then he let his breath out, slow and even, and on that exhale he heard the scrape again, that dry bark dragging, and this time it sounded closer. His eyes come open in the pitch black. His whole body went rigid inside that sleeping bag. He held his breath, testing something he didn't want to believe was true. Nothing. No groan, no scrape. The whole holler waking right along with him. He let the breath out, slow, controlled, and the scrape came again, precise, time to the second, closer than before. Now I want you to understand what that shelter had felt like when he crawled into it. Wide open on that 4th side, plenty of room, sky visible clear past the roofline. But something had changed in the geometry of that space while he lay there trying not to notice. It had gotten smaller, tighter, like the darkness itself had leaned in closer to listen along with him. He turned his head, slow as a man moving under water, and looked toward the open face of that shelter. And there it was. The dead white trunk that had been standing patient in the tree line was not standing in the tree line no more. It had come forward. It leaned now clean across the open face of the lean-to, its bone-pale bark inches, son, above where his boots lay at the foot of his sleeping bag, and creeping closer with every one of his own exhales, matched breath for breath, patient as winter itself. He was paralyzed, truly paralyzed, the way a rabbit goes still under a hawk's shadow, believing, foolish as it is, that stillness might be the same thing as safety. Zipped up tight in that mummy bag, arms pinned at his sides, he could do nothing but stare upward into the dark. His mind, racing now, went scrambling back through every childhood tale he'd ever half listened to and dismissed. Every old-timer's warning he'd smiled politely at and forgotten the moment he'd shouldered his pack. He understood, all at once and far too late, why the trail markers up on that stretch of ridge were spaced closer together than anywhere else on the mountain, and why the local outfitters never did stock that section on their recommended maps. He understood, with a cold certainty that settled into his chest heavier than the winter air itself, that he was not the first fool to make camp under that particular stretch of tree line, and that he would not be remembered as the last. And that's when he saw the eyes. 2 knotholes, high in that ancient dead timber, wide set and hollow and staring straight down at him. Knotholes that any daylight-eyed man would have called just knotholes, just the natural scarring of old wood. But in that dark, time to his breath, leaning lower with every exhale he gave it, they did not look natural at all. They looked wide-set, patient, awake. He wanted to scream, couldn't find the breath to do it. And that, son, that right there, was the second mistake. Because a scream, even a small one, is still a breath, and a breath is still a rhythm, and rhythm is the only thing that entity had ever needed from him. There weren't no thrashing fight to speak of, son. No chase through the dark timber. No wild scramble for a knife or a flashlight. Whatever that thing was, it didn't want a struggle. It only ever wanted stillness. And by then, it had all the stillness it could ask for. He told me, the boy who lived, the one who carried this story down off that mountain, that the smell come first, before anything else. A cold, dry, freezing kind of scent, like a wood pile left out through a hard winter, like sap gone to ice 100 years back. It filled up that little shelter till there weren't no other air left to breathe. And it was the smell, more than the sight of it, that finally let him understand what he was lying under. The scraping stopped. It had gotten as close as it needed to get. And now it was only listening, waiting on the very last thing it required of him, same as it had been waiting on him from the first breath he drew in that shelter, One more slow, even, trustin' exhale, so it would know, for certain and for sure, exactly when to come the rest of the way down. He didn't give it that breath, son. Not that night. Somewhere in him, past the fear, past the cold, he found the one thing that thing hadn't accounted for. A breath broke wrong on purpose, ragged, uneven, a gasp, sharp and sudden, that carried no rhythm at all for it to read. And in that half a second of confusion, that's when he moved. Threw himself sideways out from under that leanin' trunk, sleeping bag and all, rolling out into the black, wet dark past the shelter's open edge. And he did not stop moving till the gray light of morning found him 3 miles down that ridge, huddled under a rock overhang, shaking so hard he couldn't hold a canteen steady. They tell me when the rangers finally went up to that lean-to, weeks later, following his report, there weren't no dead tree leaning against it at all. Just an old shelter, standing quiet in the tree line, same as it had for 60 years. No Widowmaker in sight. That's the way of it, son, near as I can tell. It don't leave a mark for daylight eyes to find. It only ever leaves a memory, and a man who don't sleep quite so deep anymore. But son, you go on and remember this the next time you're bedded down somewhere quiet, somewhere with a roof over your head and a sound you can't quite place scratching at the edges of your hearing. You remember that the mountain don't forget a rhythm once it's learned it. And you remember the fatal mistake weren't never about hearing that sound in the first place. It was about teaching it your breath. Now go on and get your rest, son. Sleep however comes natural to you. Just maybe don't breathe too even tonight.